First, fast, and accurate. News Channel 25, WVTT.
Now our first look at weather here on WVTT. If you looked outside, you definitely saw snow today. We did make it all the way up to 35 degrees and just a real disparity in terms of snowfall amounts. An inch or 2 inches in the towns, up on higher elevations, as much as 8+ inches of snow in some areas. It just depended on where you were. And we will be seeing a little bit more snow during the overnight hours tonight. Low temperature dipping down to 28 degrees. And then during the daytime tomorrow, snow in the morning, tapering off by the afternoon. High temperature tomorrow, 32 degrees. We'll have complete weather details coming up here on WVTT.
Global news update on WVTT.
A deadly shooting at a lumber company today in Switzerland. A gunman killed 2 people and himself, according to local media reports. Now, 7 people were seriously injured in the attack at the plant near the central Swiss city of Lucerne. 350 people work at the factory. The motive for the attack is not known at this time. Pope Benedict XVI led the church during one of the most difficult times in its history. Some believe he did a good job trying to lift the secret veil of the priest sex abuse scandal, but others say he failed miserably. CNN's Ben Wiedemann reports from Rome.
Suffer the little children and forbid them not to come unto me, Jesus said. Words perverted by hundreds of pedophile priests. High-level cases of child abuse have rocked the church in the Americas, Europe, and elsewhere, and have dogged Pope Benedict from the beginning of his reign. Just weeks before he was elected Pope in 2005, then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger publicly lamented what he called the filth within the church. The meaning of his words were unclear then, but now better understood.
He had to counteract a mindset, a culture, which was deep-seated, which was the culture of cover-up.
Veteran Vatican watcher Gerard O'Connell says Benedict was deeply disturbed by what he found when investigating abuse of children by priests.
So by the time he became Pope in April 19, 2005, he had read about 10,000 dossiers. And so no one has become Pope with such an inner knowledge of what he called the filth in the church.
Benedict has met victims and apologized on behalf of the church. The church has paid hundreds of millions of dollars in damages to abuse victims. In books and articles, investigative journalist Carmelo Abate has documented the weakness of priestly flesh. He's investigated sex in the Vatican and pedophilia in the priesthood. He has nothing but praise for the soon-to-be former Pope Benedict. Finally, we're talking about sexuality inside the church, he says, about pedophilia inside the church, and behind the Pope's final gesture is an attempt to lift the lid and confront this problem. The picture that seems to emerge is one of a Pope struggling to confront the issue of pedophile priests. But it's also a picture that some victims of abuse flatly reject.
Action to protect kids.
As a teenager growing up in Missouri, David Cloesy was repeatedly abused by a priest.
I just can't imagine that there's anything more important than protecting the safety of boys and girls in the pews.
All 5 of these actions.
The founder of the Survivors Network for those abused by priests, he says Pope Benedict has been a tough enforcer of church doctrine, but woefully short in action against problem priests and against the church hierarchy who protected them.
He's the most powerful religious figure on the planet, and no one in Catholicism knows more about pedophilia than Benedict. He's been in the absolute perfect position to take dramatic steps that will make a real difference in the lives of children, and he refuses.
The priest who allegedly abused Cloesy has since resigned the ordination. The Pope, compelled to confront the issue of abusing priests, resigns his office on Thursday. Ben Wiedemann, CNN, Rome.
A landmark achievement of the civil rights era that changed American politics could soon be gutted. Today, the Supreme Court is considering a challenge to the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The justices will examine whether one of the law's key provisions is still constitutional. Joe Johns explains.
Calera, Alabama, in the heart of Dixie, population just under 20,000. 8 years ago, Ernest Montgomery was elected as only the second African American to serve on the Calera City Council. At that time, he represented the mostly black part of town, tucked between the railroad tracks and the interstate.
I think because of our past, we have to accept, the way times were.
4 years ago, the city council redrew voting lines. Montgomery lost re-election by 2 votes.
They added 4 large subdivisions, which was predominantly white, to my district, which diluted the district from a 67% African-American district down to about a 28%.
But the U.S. Department of Justice stepped in and helped Montgomery get his job back, saying the county needed to get federal approval to make the changes under the Voting Rights Act, first signed by Lyndon Johnson in 1965.
To eliminate the last vestiges of injustice.
At the heart of the act is what's known as Section 5, which allows the Justice Department or a court to shut down discriminatory changes to voting laws, mostly in southern states, before they go into effect. President Bush and Congress saw the need to renew the law as recently as 2006. But now, Shelby County, Alabama, where Calera is located, is challenging Section 5 as a violation of states' rights. The symbols and historic landmarks of the Old South are all around Shelby County, Alabama. Just one county to the north, at this church in Birmingham, 4 little black girls were killed in a bombing in 1963. And now the Supreme Court is being asked to accept the argument that the South has changed enough to overturn what some say is the heart of the Voting Rights Act.
I think
Frank Ellis is the Shelby County attorney.
The South is not the same South it was in 1964. The whole country has changed. We're a dynamic society.
How much things have changed is disputed. Whites we spoke with in this local diner said they see the re-election of the country's first black president as a real sign.
I still think about discrimination going back even 15 years, 10 years in the South. I think we are gaining ground.
But African Americans recalled the battle in the last election over alleged voter suppression. And some say things have gotten worse because Obama's election made some white voters angry.
You have, people who are very unhappy. During the election time, you had, dummies of President Obama hanging from the trees.
Experts say this is not a trial run at the Supreme Court. The core of the Voting Rights Act could be struck down. Justice Clarence Thomas has said he believes Section 5 is unconstitutional. Based on past cases, one of the court's biggest questions may be why Section 5 applies to part or all of just 16 states instead of the entire nation. Joe Johns, CNN, Washington.
And speaking of civil rights, President Obama unveiled a statue at the Capitol today to recognize Rosa Parks, who was instrumental in pushing that movement forward.
Rosa Parks' singular act of disobedience launched a movement. The tired feet of those who walked the dusty roads of Montgomery helped a nation see that to which it had once been blind. It is because of these men and women that I stand here today. It is because of them that our children grow up in a land more free.
And a gruesome discovery in the Bronx to tell you about tonight. Authorities found the chopped up body of a 45-year-old woman in bags. She's been identified as Tanya Bird, a home health nurse. New York City's police commissioner described how the remains were discovered.
A dog walker in St. Mary's Park found a bag, actually found 2 bags in the They were separated. Ultimately opened one of the bags. He found what appeared to be body parts.
Now, Bird's 23-year-old son, Bashid McLean, is in custody and is being questioned. The New York Daily News and the New York Post, quoting police sources, report that he has confessed to chopping up his mother. Time now for a look at our Wall Street wrap-up numbers, the closing numbers on Wall Street, sponsored by News Radio 96.7 WVTT. An up day for the Dow, back up over the 14,000 mark, closing a little over 176 points to the positive at 14,076. NASDAQ up a little bit over 32 and a half, closing at 3162. And the S&P up as well, 19 points, closing at 1516. Coming up on Twin Tiers Evening News, a look at WVTT Sports, also our St. Bonaventure University Corner, a look at the WVTT community calendar, and also that snowy forecast. How much more snow? WVTT Chief Meteorologist Jim Rinaldi will be here with the Twin Tiers official forecast next on News Channel 25 WVTT.